According to the DSM-5, the criteria for gender identity disorder in children is a marked difference between one's expressed gender and their assigned gender for at least 6 months, and it has to manifest in at least 6 ways, including the first criteria. The criteria are: number 1, they really want to be the other gender or insist that they are the other gender. Number 2, boys insist on wearing girl clothing and girls insist on wearing typical male clothing, and they resist wearing girl clothing. Number 3 is there is a strong preference for cross-gender roles in fantasy play. Number 4 is there is a strong preference for toys and activities that are stereotypically used by the opposite gender. Number 5 is a strong preference to play with children of the other gender. Number 6 is in boys there is a strong rejection of typically male toys, games, and activities, and they tend to avoid rough and tumble play. In girls, there's a strong rejection of female toys, games, and activities. Number 7 is a strong dislike of one's sexual anatomy. And number 8 is a strong desire to have sex characteristics that match one's expressed gender. In adults, gender identity disorder is a marked difference between one's expressed gender and their assigned gender for at least 6 months and is manifested in at least 2 ways. The criteria are: number 1, a marked difference between one's expressed gender and primary or secondary sex characteristics. Number 2 is the strong desire to get rid of one's primary or secondary sex characteristics because they do not match up with one's expressed gender. Number 3 is a strong desire for the primary or secondary sex characteristics of a person's expressed gender. Number 4 is a strong desire to be the other gender. Number 5 is a strong desire to be treated like the other gender. And number 6 is a strong conviction that one has the same feelings or reactions as the other gender. In both children and adults, GID is associated with significant distress in important areas of function. This disorder is fairly rare. In males, it is seen in between 1.5 and 5 out of 100,000 people, and in females, it is seen between 2 and 3 out of every 100,000 individuals. It is about 3 times more common in men than it is in women. It's tricky to diagnose this disorder in juveniles because you need to rule out a couple of things. The first thing you need to rule out is transvestic fetishism, which is when individuals dress in clothing associated with the opposite gender for sexual gratification. Another thing that you need to consider is you need to distinguish it from a male with same-sex arousal patterns who sometimes does feminine things, or a female with same-sex arousal patterns who sometimes does masculine things. The last thing you need to make note of is whether this individual has a disorder of sexual development. One method of treatment is to try and make an individual more comfortable with the identity that they are born with. For example, if you have a boy who only wants to play with dolls, you don't let him play with them and you take all of the dolls away and give him only trucks and toys that are typically more masculine. Another treatment is to let the child be true to themselves and to support the decision that they make. A third option is hormone replacement therapy. The hormone replacement therapy is a shot that blocks sex hormones from being released into the body. This allows children and adolescents to be able to grow and mature physically while stopping them from maturing sexually. The last treatment option is to have sexual reassignment surgery. In order to qualify for that, individuals have to have lived in that assigned gender for 1 to 2 years in order to make sure that they really want to go through with the operation. Based on the NPR segments, I think that the approach of supporting your child that Diane Ehrensaft gave is the best. I think this is the best because the treatment option that Dr. Ken Zucker gave is very hard on the child. A lot of children have huge difficulties if you just tell them they can't play with a certain toy or can't use certain products. Hormone replacement therapy is a good option if the patient is 100% certain about what gender they want to be. A major side effect of hormone replacement is that it can cause the patient to be sterile. So that's why it's really important for them to know what they're getting into before they commit to it. I do not think that gender identity disorder is a mental disorder. Before learning about this disorder, I was convinced that it was, but I believe that it's not a mental disorder because it's not something that you can make a child or an adult stop being. If they truly have gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder, they're not just gonna change automatically, and nothing you can do is gonna be able to get them to change who they are. It's just a part of them. The end.